Sony have created a new camera just today, which is you're watching it today, which means the video was yesterday actually. But Sony released a new camera called the A1. So this is really unique about this camera because there are two different types of cameras. If you follow me, one type of camera that I learned is that there'll be a camera that has fast shutter speed or like frames per second, but the quality, the megapixel would not be as high. The other type would be like high megapixels, like 50 megapixels or 100 megapixels, but the frames per second would not be as high as compared to the first one I mentioned. But Sony A1 is a very unique camera because the Sony A1 meets in the middle between the fast frames per second and the high megapixel. That is really insane because not a lot of cameras meet in the middle and be so good at taking high frames per second and take high resolution or megapixels, and that is insane. And another cool thing about the camera is that it shoots in 8K. 8K resolution. 8K. Now I am very curious, will the Sony A1 have the same problem like the Canon EOS R5? The Canon EOS R5 can shoot in 8K, but the only problem is that it will overheat within like 20 minutes after shooting in 8K. You would not really want a camera that shoots in 8K, but it overheats in like 20 minutes. Most of the time we are filming videos and we need more than 20 minutes of filming because we need to capture as much clips as we can. We can't just have 20 minutes of our time and then just say, sorry, the camera is overheated. That's not what we want right there. So I'm wondering if the Sony A1 will have that same problem. Personally, I do not think that Sony will have that kind of overheating problem like the EOS R5 because Sony A1 just released yesterday and the R5 was last year. I think that the Sony A1 had the solution of that problem and will not cause the camera to overheat. If the camera overheats while shooting in 8K, then that would not be the camera that I want. Another cool thing about the Sony A1 is that it can shoot 4K in 120 frames per second. 4K and 120 frames per second, that is insanely amazing for a small camera to film that high quality of a footage and can capture that much frames per second. And that's, in that small of a camera. It doesn't need a professional cinematic camera. It's in the mirrorless camera. The camera that I am filming in right now it can shoot up to 4K 30 frames per second. I can shoot 1080 in 60 frames per second, but not in 120 frames per second. Maybe soon I may upgrade from this camera to a Sony A1 because 4K and 120 frames per second? Yeah. The sensor on the Sony A1 is 50 megapixels. That's a lot of megapixels. Compared to the A9 Mark II, A9 Mark II shoots in 24 megapixels. If you buy the A1, the megapixel will be doubled compared to the A9 Mark II. The continuous shooting on the A1 shoots up to 30 frames per second. 30 frames per second sounds too much, but do we really need 30 frames per second? Yes, we really do need 30 frames per second. The more the better. So you can use the A1 to almost anything, like sports photography, landscape photography, videoing, almost anything you can do with the A1, because for sports photography you have 30 frames per second to shoot, because you'll get a perfect pose of an athlete competing, and the videoing you have the 8K option, and also you have a 4K option with a 120 frames per second, and also you get a 50 megapixel sensor on that camera. With sports photography and high resolution photo mixed together, that is just perfect right there. Not a lot of cameras can do that, and not a lot of cameras can beat the A1. The only problem is the money. That's always a problem to every photographer in this world. It is the money. Sony is planning to sell it for $6,500. That is a lot of money. That's a lot of money for me as well. I personally do not have that kind of budget for that camera. Now, if I have an option between an R5 and an A1, I will most likely go towards the A1 because I am very curious. Also, I know that the Sony cameras are so amazing, and I really like the fact that it can shoot in 8K, but the R5 can also shoot in 8K, but I just don't want to run into the problem of overheating. And if the A1 doesn't run into that problem, then definitely I'm going toward that camera, because I want to shoot that high of a quality without running into a problem of overheating. I don't think that the Sony A1 will overheat, and I would definitely want to get that camera. I believe that this camera is like the top compared to other great mirrorless cameras around in the market right now. I think that the A1 have beaten all cameras and made it to the very, very top of the game. I am very excited to learn more about the camera. I hope that this camera will not overheat, first of all, and if it doesn't overheat, I will be planning on buying that camera. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you really enjoyed this, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, comment down below. If you have any questions about this camera, leave a comment down below and I will be very happy to answer your question. I'll see you guys next time.